Hey guys, welcome back to another Vanguard video. Today we're here talking about Legend of the Celestial Fury Estacion, and it's a brand new Vanguard that we got. JP got it a little bit earlier, but we have basically Shiki Otei's TD finally bringing it to English, and I think it's one of the most beginner-friendly decks out there. So I'm going to go over some deck lists, spend more time talking about the options that you have in the list itself, and then why you should play the deck. So first off, why should you play Estacion? Well, it's used by the ex-BLASTS leader Shiki in the Skyride manga, and revolves around 4 seasonal dragons. As you can see on the right, he's got Mad Aura on the Volume 3 Skyride cover. It's also a very fast aggro playstyle with plant tokens engaged, doing up to 5 attacks a turn because there's a grade 2 that can spawn a plant token. And as soon as you hit turn 3, you're getting crest power without having to stride, getting plus 5k for every 3 plant gauge according to the blast token. And the blast token also is unaffected by your opponent's card effects, so it's pretty much impossible to get rid of unless they have a way to attack your back row. Estacion itself is also a very strong Vanguard, being able to CB1 check top 5 essentially and add cards to your hand, so you can selectively add PGs, any attackers, whatever you need to live. And then when he attacks, you can discard 2 plant gauges to search your deck or drop for up to 1 blast, cult a Rigard Circle, and if you search the deck, shuffle, basically tutoring out one of your seasonal dragons to power up your turn and really just rush down your opponent with multiple attacks. So here's a quick Estacion overview. Instead of going through every single card in the deck list, I'm going to talk about more of the flex options you have for the deck that don't come in the TD, because I think the cards for the TD are very straightforward and kind of explain themselves. But anyways, the tempo again is usually very aggro with this deck. You're kind of slamming everything down, getting 3 basically plant gauges for your blast token as soon as it spawns, and just rushing down your opponent, trying to tri-lane every single turn, basically doing 3 attacks. The price of the deck is actually not that bad if you ignore Alvina. Alvina and Sea Rumblers are basically the most expensive cards in the deck, but you don't always need a playset of them depending on the list that you'll copy. There are other budget options such as Diantha or Broccoli, other things you could be playing if you want to save money and not have to spend a lot on the deck. For ease of use, I think this deck is super easy to use. That's why it's very beginner friendly as well. It's very easy to simply just spawn the blast token, spawn 3 plant tokens. That's why you're going to mulligan for cards that do get you a lot of plant token gauges every turn, because you'll be able to spawn 2 or more plant tokens and then just shove those cards into soul as your plant gauge and be able to basically rush down your opponent while also getting that power as soon as you hit turn 3. The deck is also very straightforward in terms of aggression. You're really just trying to tri-lane your opponent every turn. So if they're on grade 2, you're hitting like a 10k plus column, etc, etc, you're just rushing down your opponent as fast as possible. For competitiveness, because we are in a BAV meta and this actually came out before BAV, I do think the competitiveness is a little bit lower, but I've still put it at 4 out of 5 because I still think this deck is somewhere around tier 2, tier 3-ish. If you were to make it in a tier list, it's still very strong, very aggressive, and it still can keep up because you do have a lot of deck filter that is likely to find you PGs or other things, so you are more likely to live, as well as decent draw because of Harvest Elf early while also rushing down your opponent, so your hand isn't completely empty when you are kind of just beating face pretty much. In terms of utility, there's a grade 3 that gets resist, and you do have ways basically to kind of clear out your front row or put plant gauges in the front row for like the Artisaria matchup. It's very easy to rebuild your board. You have an order that does it. So you do have good utility into a lot of matchups, and you have a lot of aggression, which helps you against decks that kind of want to stall the game or decks that have a really strong turn 3. So you can finish them off on your turn 3 or basically just really explode them going second when you ride up to grade 3 yourself. Alright, so here's the Estacion Mulligan guide. For late game, these are cards you really don't want to see until turn 4-ish, and Definite Keep are cards you definitely want to find or mulligan for and keep in your opening hand. These are cards that will get you 2 or more cards on your board instantly because you want to get those 3 cards to shove into soul for the blast token. For the second priority, these are cards that are going to help during your ride phase, such as Sea Rumbler, Sea Rainbow Dragon. Those are going to get you Persona Shield Cyclers or use up energy to draw 1. Pence is very strong in this deck. Getting plus 5k early on turn 2 when you E3 is really strong. Be able to selectively thin deck, call things out. Alvina is also very strong, being able to E3 grab the order back from drop or spawn out another grade 1, such as Harvest Elf, which is here because you can sack 2 things in a column and draw 1, which is very strong. Sunny Spring you'll also see as a few in some lists because it's just E3, call a plant token, and it's also 10k booster, so it does make numbers. Absolute Winter here is basically here just for like the resist and for the extra crit in some matchups. Some lists do cut it just because it's kind of useless early game, and I do understand that, but some lists will usually play 1 to 2. Really depends on what you're looking at. And then of course Persona Ride is just kind of extra overkill on top of your crest, so your front row is getting usually like 25k, like massive amounts of power, and you're doing 5 attacks in that turn, so you're trying to eat out as much hand as you can out from your opponent and really just end the game as soon as possible. Alright, now to talk about some of the Estacion card lists as well as the cards that they play that you need to get in order to upgrade the trial deck. Now a card you'll see at 2 to 4 in basically every list is Alvina. Alvina is just one of the best green generics of all time and it does so much for the deck. It gets plus 2k if you have 4 more units, so it makes a solo lane if your opponent's on grade 2, being 10k to a 10k Vanguard. You can also add a normal order from drop to your hand for Energy Blast 3 or res a grade 1 or less, so once you soul blast like Burrowing Mushrooms or any other card, you can call it back and basically plus. You do want to play the order, which is the Vital Blast token every turn because you get extra plant gauge for your blast token and you get to call something out of deck thinning and filling up your board to either, shove into soul for the blast token or just rush down your opponent, making several lanes to just really aggro tempo as fast as you can. So a card you'll basically always see it for is Burrowing Mushrooms. This card is amazing. It gets you soul, and then for that cost you basically spawn 2 plant tokens. So when you play the blast tokens effect to shove in 3 cards from your board, you'll shove in 2 tokens and then 1 other unit card or another token and basically get that draw 1 effect and 3 more plant token gauge. Along with the Vital Blast order, you'll be reaching 4 gauge every turn essentially. A card you'll also see in a lot of lists from set 9 that just came out is Harvest Elf. Harvest Elf is just amazing. It's able to spawn a plant token for Soul Blast 1 and basically just make a column that you can rush down your opponent with, and then you'll sack off that column anyways to draw 1 and basically clearing off your board while also keeping your hand very healthy. You'll also see the Ace Unit Pence in basically every list. This card is amazing for this list specifically because you're going through deck very fast. It's a more selective deck then, as well as being able to res anything back from your drop. So you can res Harvest Elf, draw 1. You can res back Sea Rumbler, your Persona turn, grab something back. It is just a very strong card in general. Speaking of Sea Rumble Shooter, we have him here at 3. Usually lists will play 2, a little bit less. It's just a mix of really what ride phase cyclers you want in your deck. Sea Rumbler's Persona effect will go off on your turn 4 if you do find Persona, like his second effect for the Omplace, grab an order or spawn something back, does come up. So the Summer Dragon here is really interesting and at 1 because it does stop restand. It's basically a stun effect. It's really interesting because you could be playing more of the other Summer Dragons and this list isn't playing the grade 3 for the resist and crit. It's basically just focusing more on the consistency of early game while also keeping a hand, as well as being able to spawn a lot of plant tokens very early. The Autumn Dragon is a card you'll basically see in every list because it spawns a plant token on place for free and also acts as a combine rusher, so in situations where your hand is really bad, like mostly triggers, and you do have to call him out and get more plant tokens for the blast token effect or anything else, he is really helpful to kind of just fill up your board and also makes a column on his own because you can spawn a plant token on either side, and this also is your enabler for 5 attacks. So the attack pattern is basically you'll swing your sides, swing Vanguard, call this grade 2 Autumn Dragon, and he'll spawn a blast token in the other column, and it'll basically be 20 bigger depending on how much you high rolled for the blast token, and that's before accounting for triggers or any other effects. So this is the list you'll usually see for Estacion with these green generics. You'll usually see Twincast as the Regulus piece because it adds a little bit more defense to the deck. Your other option is basically Fire Regulus because you aim to play the normal order every turn and Fire Regulus removes itself, and it's, that is more deck thinning for the deck. But a lot of decks will vouch for Twincast because your hand usually isn't that big because you're very much like a glass cannon deck trying to basically slam down your entire board and really just rush down your opponent and end the game as fast as possible. So the next list got rank 1 in Hakata, and it's pretty cool because it's playing 3 of these Spring Dragons, and the Spring Dragon is really neat because it's 10k booster as mentioned earlier, and it E3 spawns a plant token, so every turn your excess energy, if you're not using it for Sea Rumbler or Alvina, you're basically getting a free plant token onto your board. It's also playing less Harvest Elf, and instead we only have 2 Alvina, but it's opting for a lot more ride phase cyclers. As you can see, we have 2 Sea Rumble Shooter as well as 3 Rainbow Dragon here, and this is the Persona Shield Cycler. So whenever you place him or discard him for the ride deck, you reveal a Persona ride and then basically get a 10k shield. But if your opponent is playing a Stride deck set or a collab deck that has a crest other than the energy generator, it becomes a 15k shield. We also have the Winter Dragon here as a 1-off just for the basically crit effect, and it does activate in hand to basically be a 10k shield during the guard step. So the only thing I'll say that's a little bit awkward about Fire Regulus, as you'll also notice as a pattern for like Sea Rainbow Dragon as well as Alvina, is that their on-place effects only work when placed from hand other than by a card ability essentially, well specifically for Rainbow Dragon. So Fire Regulus and the normal Vital Blast order won't actually proc them, but of course it's still easy to get those in hand, as well as being able to just have a lot of ways to basically call them out from deck and still basically get value out of cards that would convert into plant tokens, such as the 3 cards mentioned earlier right there, as well as Harvest Elf that will basically keep your hand healthy, and of course the 5 ride phase cyclers. Alright, so here's kind of an older list that won the Vanguard Ultimate Cup, which is the singles tournament a very long time ago. This list is playing Valnut over the Shiki Otei. Shiki Otei is just power to front row, crit, draw 2, and heal, so it does like everything. So, you know, it's basically every trigger combined into one, but Valnut here does kind of help with the aggression if you do flip a crit, because they're playing 4 of the Winter Dragon, which on place when called by the Estacion effect, basically by Vanguard's skill, you'll get crit +1, so you'll have 100 mil 2 crit unit swinging twice, which is pretty crazy. You also have Pence here as usual, Alvina's here at 3, you have the Autumn Dragon at 4, but you have Diantha at 3, which is really interesting because Diantha can basically call anything back from drop, including placing the grade 3 to get the crit effect again. So this is kind of a more high rolly list where you do aim to basically hit that turn 3 double crit off the Winter Dragon, and the Winter Dragon is 10k shield at worst if it's in your hand or on your board during the previous turn, and also does get resist. So this might be a list where target removal was very strong, and they're basically playing these kind of lists with the Winter Dragon in order to counteract it. Alright, so the last list to cover is from Oshiruko. It got ranked 2, and this might look a little bit more like a budget list until you see the 4 Alvina, but it's playing 2 Broccolis and 2 of the Summer Dragons. The Summer Dragon is basically there for a little bit more power, and the Broccoli is pretty much there just for the early CB draw 1 cycle. A lot of people were trying 3 to 4 Broccoli early in the list before they cut them. At first, actually, the Estacion list was playing the Skyride Volume 2 card to kind of Soul Blast 1, basically the Teeth Fault, to make a board. Your soul gets hit down really fast between the Vital Blaze token, as well as, you know, another grade 2 Soul Blasting every turn. So a lot of people vouch to basically cut that, and that's why a lot of these lists will show a lot more Red Face Cyclers and cards that basically help keep your soul, like the Spring Dragon to EB3 spawn a plant token. The Elementary of choice here is Festival, likely for collab matchups because it is a free PG if your opponent has a crest other than the energy generator, because a lot of Love and Berry and other decks were going around basically at the time. So a lot of JP was playing the basically Festival Elementaria instead of the Triple Drive Elementaria. But yeah, that pretty much wraps it up for Estacion. There's also 2 of the Summer Dragon in this list, which is usually what you won't see in other lists. They'll usually try to play like one of the Winter Dragon or something else in the list. But yeah, if you do want to see more lists, definitely check out Vanguard Paradox. There's a lot to go through. I kind of just selected like the most recent ones and ones that were like basically in different uses. A lot of JP's results are team formats, but for example, like the Vanguard Cup one is very interesting as well because that's a singles format. So I tried to choose a different variety of lists, but as you can see, a lot of Estacion lists look very similar. A lot of plant token spawn, obviously 4 Burrowing Mushrooms, questionable amounts of Alvina, Ride Face Cycler, plant token support, whatever there is, basically just rush down your opponent, and of course the 1 ace unit. And I do think Harvest Elf is really nice. I think 2 to 3 is a really nice ratio that a lot of lists were running. You can definitely test it out yourself and see how it feels because those cards aren't too expensive. They're around like 10 USD-ish. The most expensive cards are definitely Sea Rumbler and Alvina, and I think you can definitely get away with not playing Sea Rumbler depending on your list. But yeah, that's pretty much it for Estacion. Definitely one of my favorite decks to come out from the Skyride. When I saw it in the manga, it was really hyped. The manga panels are really great for when Shiki does have his fight. If you do want to see that in, I believe it's in Volume 3. It might actually be in Volume 2 because I think Volume 3 is when they fight the other BLAST executives pretty much. But yeah, that's pretty much it from me for this video. Do let me know if you want to see more, and then like and subscribe, share, etc., whatever it is, and I'll see you again in another video.